Probably not these conflicts.
Well, here we are for our Tuesday Torah study. We're going to continue on with talking about the Tower of Babel, and we finally reached verse 4 in chapter 11. So we'll have a word with our Elohim, and we'll take a look at this. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this time that we have together to study your word. We ask that you will open our ears, open our eyes, and open our hearts so that we can hear, see, and understand what your word has to tell us. We thank you for it in the name of Yeshua. Amen. All right, so our journey from creation, having been created to fellowship with Elohim, was offset by Adam's transgression of eating from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, disobeying the commandments of Elohim. Basically, he had two commandments: eat from this tree and don't eat from this tree. But there's a question here: why did Adam transgress?
Oh,
wow.
Why did Adam transgress? He had everything he needed in the garden. He had a personal one-on-one relationship with Elohim. There wasn't really anything there to give him doubt. He didn't have to worry about the water bill or the electric bill.
Separation.
Must have been nice.
But is it because he was separated from the spiritual part of?
Okay, we can say yeah, because Isha were separated. That's good. Let's read in Bereshit 3. This is verses 5, 6, and 7. And this is the Satan talking to the serpent. It says, "For Elohim does know that in the day that you eat of it, even your eyes shall be opened, and you shall be as Elohim, knowing good and evil. And when the woman saw that the tree was good for food, and that it was a delight to the eyes, and the tree was to be desired to make one wise, she took of the fruit of it, and did eat. And she gave also to her husband with her, and he did eat. And the eyes of both of them were open, and they knew that they were naked, and they sewed fig leaves together to make themselves girdles." So we get some ideas in here as to what prompted Isha to transgress. And then because Isha transgressed, you get the wrong kind of spiritual thing going on in your assembly. Well, it causes your physical worship to go off as well. But what was it? That their eyes would be open, that they could be like Elohim, know what's good and what's bad. And then she saw that it was good for food. So she saw that this tree of knowledge of good and evil was good for food. We read a lot of things, and we take in a lot of things. And I'll use Judaism as an example. We have books like the Zohar, the Sefer Yetzirah, that people aren't allowed to study these books until they're in their 40s. And there's a reason for that, because there has to be a certain amount of maturity. But people today, you have, come study Kabbalah, and you can go online and you type in Kabbalah, and you get all kinds of, people want to teach you this, or mysticism, or the mystical secrets. So people are reading things that are doing what? They're feeding them, but they're feeding them the wrong kind of food because they think that they can be enlightened and they can be, become God. The popular thing in today's culture and in the metaphysical world is you are God. So these are some things to think about. But this transgression set the world stage for humankind to curse Yehovah Elohim and state with firm resolve that I am God. We saw the fruit of this state of mind as all life on earth was destroyed by the flood sent by Elohim to destroy a humankind that had in essence broken his heart. And we've read and understood the significance of 8 people being kept alive by the undeserved favor of Elohim in the ark that he instructed Noah to build in the story of the ark. We found the importance of finding our way in and through the word of Elohim, that the ark was a representation of the word, and we found the importance of what it was to be in the ark. Now, in our last study, we considered how our actions can affect others for good and for bad, and that we should examine our motives before building towers. This study is going to examine more the motives of the heart of humankind and hopefully open our eyes a bit to realize our state without Yahweh Elohim or his word, restoration, redemption, and deliverance in and through Yeshua. And as a reminder, the words that Elohim spoke to Noah after they had landed at Ararat and Noah had sacrificed the first animals. This is this verse that says, and Yahweh, excuse me, and Yahweh smells the sweet savor, and Yahweh said in his heart, I will not again curse the ground anymore for man's sake. And it says, for the imagination of man's heart is evil from his youth. Neither will I again smite anymore everything living as I have done. So that's basically our Elohim's summation of the condition of our hearts. And he's saying this about basically a restored humankind. I mean, there's 8 people left after this flood, but he's still saying this. So he sees that there's something inherently similar in all peoples. So we go on to Bereshit 11 in verse 4 that says, and we're continuing on, the people have come to Shinar, and they've looked to the east, they've come to Shinar, and they've decided to stay there and prepare materials to build a tower. And now in verse 4, they said, come, let us build us a city and a tower with its top in heaven, and let us make a name, lest we be scattered abroad upon the face of the whole earth. So, topically, we're seeing that they want to build themselves a city, and they're going to build this tower, and it's going to be a marvelous thing, and it's going to spread throughout the land, and people are going to say, oh, this great tower, you've got to go over to Shinar and check out this tower over there. So this word begins with Vayomeru, that means, and they said. So let's take into account the other meanings of the root of this word, which is amar. And it does mean to say or to speak, but of importance for us to understand is that this also means to say in one's heart. Now, to say in one's heart, what have we said about the heart? What did Elohim say about the heart? The imagination of man's heart is evil from its youth. So to say in the heart is something that we have to consider right off the bat. So we have something to consider, especially now as we begin our approach to Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, is what is the condition of my heart? Is it towards Elohim or towards, and what is it towards my neighbor? In other words, what is the condition of my heart towards Elohim? What is the condition of my heart towards my neighbor? We have 2 things that we're always considering, is that we love Yahweh Elohim and that we love our neighbor as ourselves. But in the midst of that is a 3rd thing, that we have to love ourselves as well. So we have to consider 2 verses out of Jeremiah before we can answer this question, because it's a hard question, really, if you think about it. What is the condition of my heart? Elohim is speaking to Jeremiah, and he says, the heart is deceitful above all things, and it is exceedingly weak. Who can know it? Then he says, I, Yahweh, search the heart. I try the reins, even to give every man according to his ways, according to the fruit of his doings. So from these verses, we can consider that we cannot see or know the condition of our own heart. Verse 9 says, the heart is deceitful above all things. Now, you always hear, follow your heart, follow your heart. This is something else that we're going to look at in this next word, that's why the word reins is used. Reins is a word that means kidneys in this particular verse. In the Torah and in ancient writings, the kidneys were said to hold or to be the seat of passions, emotions, and appetites.
Wow.
So our heart therefore tells us what to do based on emotions and not always facts. This takes us back to our consideration of the Ark of the Covenant that was made of shittim wood. Remember shittim wood, when we looked at the roots of shittim wood, it basically alluded to raw emotion. That raw emotion that this wooden box is made out of has to be overlaid with gold in order for Elohim to be able to dwell there. But it's only through the overlaying with gold that our heart becomes tempered. But this is something that we have to understand, that only through Elohim can we understand what our condition is. One emotion that can be devastating to us if we leave it unchecked is pride, which takes us back to the word amar, which is a word that also means to boast and to act proudly, as well as to challenge. They said, it says, and they said. So with this in mind, let's consider the next Hebrew word in the verse, which is hava. It means come. But this word finds its roots in yachav, that actually means to give, to provide, and interestingly enough, it means to ascribe, which is a word that basically means to give credit to someone or something else. Who is the other source if it is not our Elohim? This verse says lanu, which means us. So we consider the following idea. Giving credit to oneself out of pride and deceit of the heart. Common phrases that we hear, God knows the intention of my heart. My heart tells me so-and-so, but there's always my. So keeping this in mind, we look at the next word, which is nivne, which means let us build. The root of this word is bana, which means to establish, aside from build. So what is going to be built, or what is going to be established? Ayar, which means a city, in umigdal, which means a tower. In the word ayar, we find a word that primarily means excitement and anguish. And they get this idea that there's a lot of excitement and, I guess, anguish going on when a bunch of people are together, and therefore you have a city. But the primary meaning of ayar is excitement and anguish. Two words that can be used to describe emotion. You have a positive emotion, you have a negative emotion. But it's the root that means to be awakened, as in opening one's eyes. What did we say? The serpent said, for Elohim does know that in the day that you eat of it, even your eyes shall be opened, and you shall be as Elohim, knowing good and evil. And the woman saw that it was a delight to the eyes, and the tree was to be desired to make one wise. And the eyes of both of them were opened, and they knew that they were naked, so they sewed fig leaves. To sew fig leaves in Hebraic thought, the fig leaf represents wealth and plenty. But as a paradox, it also represents to hide something. So, what were they doing? They had transgressed, they were trying to cover it up, but at the same time they were considering how now with this new expanded knowledge that they could provide for themselves wealth, they could provide for themselves goodness. So, let's see here. The word umigdal, aside from meaning tower, means to become great. to become powerful, to be magnified, and to do great things. It alludes to doing these things in both mind and body. And the root of this word is gadil, which means to twist, as in twisting the threads where all the threads are twisted together. So we can compose an idea from this. We can consider that one who becomes established and whose eyes are open through emotion, excitement, and anguish, can become powerful and great, being magnified and doing great things while at the same time becoming twisted. Many times do we see that happen, where people set off with good motives, they have good intentions in their heart, and they set off and they start doing things, and they start getting noticed more and more, and they become loftier and loftier, and the next thing you know, they're that televangelist on TV that's fallen from grace because of immorality and this and that, or they're the Jim Jones who is telling his entire congregation some twisted doctrine, and they're all drinking some kind of poison and they're all dying off. So how many times do we see something that's supposed to be good go south because someone's emotions got mixed up? If we don't keep our eye on Elohim, if we don't stay focused on Elohim, then we start to focus on ourselves. So this begins to give us a prime example of the children of Ham, which means separated from the water, from whom came Nimrod, the mighty hunter before Yehovah. Nimrod means rebellion. And this is a state of being that we will see. This is a state of being that we will see that this type of person is in. This type of person is in rebellion, in other words. What can we construct from the verse thus far, considering Ham and Nimrod? Take a look at it and say, giving credit to oneself out of pride and deceit of the heart, becoming established in pride, can open one's eyes through emotion. One can become powerful in grace, being magnified and doing great things, while at the same time becoming twisted in vision. We become rebellious. All of a sudden, we are Elohim. And I can do all things through myself that strengthens myself. I don't need all that God stuff. And we still see it in televangelists today, that they're still doing the whole preaching thing, but we see that behind the lines it's like, we've given them what they need for the day and we're done. And so is that really a relationship? Is that something that they really care about what they're doing, or has it become now the matter of maintaining an empire? And we see that as well with rulers. And we'll talk about one of the most infamous rulers in history in a few minutes. But people are elected into office. They're elected because they say they're going to do a good job. And for the first little while, they're doing a great job. But all of a sudden, for some reason, something changes in their minds, and they start doing it out of greed, or to impress somebody, or to get this kickback. Or I'm going to retire, I'm going to need to be on this person's good side, so I'm going to give this person a lot of favors. So we see that there's a lot of different things that go on behind the word. And this idea leads us to our next word, which is verosho, which means with his top. And the root of this word is rosh, that although it can mean top, also means head, as in authority. Its primitive root means a shake, to shake, alluding to the idea that the head is easily shaken. In other words, our minds, it's easy for our minds to be changed. And it's easy for somebody to get under our skin and change our mind if we're not studied up not just in the things of Elohim, but if we're not studied up on the topic that we're dealing with, then we can have anybody come in and just wishy-washy us wherever, lead us by